I had some questions about how to complete the car project that is in Module 3. And so the first thing you're going to want to be careful to do on this one, when you do your File New Project and you get the opportunity to name the main method, use their example, use car tester. Now I had to stick a 99 on here because I had a different version of car out here, but you want to use car tester, not just public class car, for your main, because car is going to be the name of your class. You're going to need to be able to create car objects. So your main method has to have a different name than car, and that's why you'll see in a lot of the programming exercises when they're asking you to do an employee class or a moth class or something like that, they're telling you to create the project with the name whatever tester on the end, so that your main class has the tester name and you don't have a problem creating a second file in the project with the name car or employee or moth. If I name this car, if I name the project car, and then I need to create a class car, then I have run into a conflict and I can't do it. So I would have to have a workaround for that. So make sure you name them whatever tester to get your main to have a unique name. And then the next thing they asked you to do, and they gave you some sample method names, was to create the car class. And this is where, while you're in that same project, you go New File, you make sure Java class are highlighted, you do Next, and then you type in car here, okay, which I've already done, and you click Finish. And that sets up your class file. Notice it doesn't have a main in it. So they've given you some idea of the names they want you to use for the method. Now, your class name and your constructor name are always the same, hence we have public car. And they have also given us, if you scroll down in their code, they put their instance variables at the bottom. You can put them at the top or the bottom. And they've got two instance variables, efficiency and gasoline, more or less here. How much gas is in the tank and what are the MPGs? How many miles per gallon does this thing get? That's the efficiency. And so we come in, and in the constructor they're showing you that they're going to pass in the miles per gallon that the car gets. It's efficiency. And they're using as a temporary parameter, a temporary pass-through variable, and efficiency. So we take our instance variable, which we know because they've told us is named efficiency, that's the instance variable, and we set it equal to the parameter temporary variable that goes away just as soon as this constructor executes, and we take the 50 that gets substituted in here, because they're telling me they're going to pass in 50. So I'm going to take the 50 here and I'm going to replace an efficiency with 50. So it becomes efficiency equals 50. This is all done for you through these parameters, through these variables. And now it has assigned to memory in efficiency the number 50. So these lines of code right here will pass in the 50 and it will assign the 50 to the instance variable efficiency. Now I'm going to use efficiency and gas, the two instance variables, in all my other methods. I'm not going to use an efficiency anywhere else probably in this code, because an efficiency is a temporary variable. It's a parameter. It's used to pass in that 50 and then it's destroyed. So I cannot come in here and start referencing an efficiency. I can't do it. It doesn't exist because it's only a temporary parameter variable. And the other thing I like to do in all of my constructors is I really like to set all of my instance variables. If I know the default values they should be set to, I go ahead and set them, and they tell us in the write-up gasoline initially in the tank there's 0 gallons. You have to add gas to fill the car up, but that would be a safe guess. Even if it wasn't in the write-up, a safe value for the gasoline value as a default is 0. And I like to always initialize all my instance variables in the constructor, so I'm going to default that one. And so the next thing they tell you is you need a method to put gasoline in the tank. And they're telling you it's a void method. It's not going to return any information. It's going to be called add gas. You're passing in another of these temporary variables. So if I'm going to put 20 gallons in, that's going to come in stored in this temporary amount parameter. And notice I'm taking my instance variable and I'm taking whatever's in it, which happens to be 0 at the beginning, and I'm adding the amount. So when I fill up, I'll take whatever value's in the tank and I'll add the additional gallons to it. And now my instance variable gas has 20 in it when I fill it up the first time, but if I have 20 gallons and I add 5 more, it would have 25 in it. So I won't lose track of the gas that's already in there. So I'm accumulating that value. Then finally they tell us that we need, well not finally, but they tell us what we need, another void method that won't return or send any data back to the main method, but it will manipulate these instance variables, in particular gas. So we're going to pass into a temporary parameter named distance the number of miles we've driven, and we've got to figure out how much gasoline is left in the car. And this is the part that gets people. It's not the Java on this, it's the math. Because you have to think a minute. And most of us now have cars where all of that's done for you. You don't have to calculate it anymore. But if you know the miles per gallon, which is basically all efficiency is, that's the MPG that you see on the sticker on the car. How many miles can I expect to drive on 1 gallon of gas? So if I take the distance I've actually driven and I divide it by the efficiency, that should tell me approximately the number of gallons that I've used if my car is all tuned up and everything. So that's the tricky part. Most people don't get what formula to use here. It's not the Java. And then finally, I've got to deduct that amount of gas used from the gas that's in the tank that's in my instance variable gas, right? So I'm going to take gas and subtract out what I've used. Notice again, I'm not going to use these little temporary parameter variables anywhere outside of the method where they are declared more or less through this passing in. So I can't come in here and I can't start using amount. I can't do things like that because that variable doesn't exist in this method. It's only in here and it's only being used temporarily as the method is being called from main. Then finally, here's a typical getter method, get gas in tank, and they've clued me in by putting the word double here instead of void. This one needs a return statement, and I'm returning the value in the instance variable gas, okay? So notice when I have a void method, I do not have the word return anywhere in those methods because it does not return or send anything back, and the constructor never returns or send anything back. But when I have anything other than void right here, when I have double or int or string, that clues me in I must return a value of that type back to main. So gas is a double, so I'm going to return that value back. If I had int here, that would imply that gas better be an integer, okay? So the type of variable value that I'm returning, that type double needs to match the return type here in the header of the method. So now if I come into my form tester, car tester, and notice I used their code. I created a car object using the constructor called myHybrid that literally comes in here, takes that 50, passes it into this little temporary variable, and then it sets up the instance variables. Then I add the gas. I add a 20 that passes in a 20 here, and it says 0 plus 20, and now gas has a 20 in it. Then I drive 100, so I come into my drive, it passes in 100 in that distance variable. I divide it by the efficiency, which is an instance variable. This is a parameter that was passed in. Notice I don't have to declare distance in here. It's more or less declared here. I can just immediately start using it in the method and only in this method where it's set up. So I have another temporary variable I'm creating called used. I get that amount, I subtract it, I update my instance variable gas. Notice again, even though I declared used above, I cannot use it in any other method. That is a temporary variable. The only variables that last and that can be reused from method to method without being redeclared each time are the ones that belong to the class, the instance variables, the ones that are declared in between the open and closing parens of the method. Whether they're declared here, you can declare them here if you want to at the top, or whether you declare them at the bottom. And then finally, sorry, I'm going to print out, I'm going to get the gas left by getting gas in tank. Remember, this was the only method that had a return statement, and that is why this is the only line where I have to set up a variable to hold that amount coming back. This is returning something. So I have to have a variable here in main set up to hold the value coming back, and then I print that out. Whereas on these, you notice they were void methods. There's no return. Notice I don't have something equals my hybrid add gas. I literally just put my hybrid add gas. Okay, my hybrid.drive. Those are void methods. They don't return anything. So all I do is call them. Whereas a method that returns something, where I have here the double indicator, meaning a value is going back, a numeric value of type decimal is going back, I better set up a double variable here to receive that value and hold it, and then I can print it out. And my answer should be correct. If I get 100 miles per or 50 miles per gallon, I drive 100 miles, I should have used 2 gallons of gas, and I had 20, so now I should have 18. I hope that helps. I still think the hardest part of this is interpreting the write-up and not the Java. I think it's just the way they've worded some things, I think, make it hard for you when you're starting out on classes to figure out what to do. So feel free to use my code and see if you can get this one running.